Hello everyone, this is Yuko. I've noticed that a lot of information about what's happening in China isn't always accurately conveyed to countries outside of China. That's why I've taken it upon myself to gather information from various sources and share it in English on this channel. Since my native language isn't English, I'm using an AI speaker to generate the audio to ensure that the information is conveyed accurately. I would appreciate your comments on the content of the videos, as I'm sourcing information from multiple media outlets. In this video, I'd like to talk about Country Garden, one of China's major real estate giants, which has been gaining significant attention in Japan and worldwide since the beginning of this year. Currently, Country Garden is said to be the largest real estate developer in China, similar to Evergrande, but it is also burdened with massive debt, raising concerns about its future. Regarding Country Garden's debt, recent information has come to light that has garnered global attention. First, let me summarize this information briefly before discussing the points of interest. On August 6, Country Garden was supposed to make interest payments on its dollar-denominated debt but failed to do so on the promised date. However, missing an interest payment doesn't immediately lead to default, there is a 1-month grace period. So, the focus was on whether they could make the interest payment during this grace period. Just in the nick of time, on September 5, they managed to make the interest payment, avoiding a default on their dollar-denominated debt. This is the first part of the story. Now, moving on to the second major development, which happened on September 12. This pertains to 6 debts, not in dollars but in Chinese yuan, renminbi. They proposed to postpone the repayment of these 6 debts for 3 years. This drew attention because, under the current circumstances, they cannot repay the money. If they postpone the repayment deadline for such an extended period, it raises questions about the future of Country Garden. The major discussion regarding Country Garden's debt revolves around these 2 points, and what's noteworthy is the difference in their approach to dollar-denominated debt and renminbi-denominated debt. They made every effort to gather cash at the last minute to pay the interest on the dollar-denominated debt to avoid immediate default. In contrast, they extended the deadline significantly for the renminbi-denominated debt. Those lending money to Country Garden are becoming increasingly concerned because they need to recover their funds as soon as possible. The company's future is uncertain, and it's even unclear what might happen with the Chinese Communist Party's rule. Extending the repayment deadline so far into the future poses a risk because if they can't repay, it might lead to a default. However, the reason creditors accepted this extension is likely due to pressure from the Chinese Communist Party within China. This is because China's large financial institutions are state-owned, and their policies can affect how debtors are treated. If they extended the repayment deadline too far, there's the risk that they might never be able to recover the money. The creditors are asking why they accepted such terms, and it's because within China, there's pressure from the Communist Party to do so. These large financial institutions in China are essentially controlled by the Communist Party, so it's in line with their policies. However, this might not work with foreign creditors. If they default, foreign creditors might sue them in places like Hong Kong or China, but it's uncertain whether Chinese courts would accept those cases and proceed with the proceedings. China doesn't have a strong track record of dealing with economic issues legally, and it might not want to exert legal pressure on foreign entities as it would be seen as against its interests. Furthermore, it's not just a matter of Chinese creditors. Creditors from outside China might also sue Country Garden. They could potentially seize the company's assets overseas. In this scenario, assets that hold future potential for Country Garden could be taken by foreign entities. Therefore, to avoid this, Country Garden is likely trying to gather cash by selling assets within China. However, this further strains their financial situation. If they fail to repay their debts, their management is likely aware that they will be sued by creditors, and they are selectively repaying creditors who are seen as having the potential to cause significant trouble if not repaid. In this context, there have been reports of foreign creditors eyeing the massive assets that Country Garden holds in Malaysia. The question arises, what are these Malaysian assets? I discussed this in a video on this channel on October 20th of last year, but it's likely that not many people remember that. So, Let me briefly reintroduce it. Country Garden is engaged in a massive real estate development project in Malaysia known as Forest City. This project, also called in Chinese, aims to create a city where 700,000 people will live by the end of the project's second phase in 20 years. However, progress on the project has been slow, with only about 15% completion despite almost half of the scheduled time having passed. The project has already started sales, but there are currently only around 9,000 residents, some of whom are related to the project's development. Therefore, it's unlikely that the project will achieve its goal of housing 700,000 people, and it's been referred to as a potential ghost town. Foreign creditors lending money to Country Garden have reportedly taken an interest in this project because, despite its challenges, they see it as a valuable asset. If Country Garden defaults and is sued in a jurisdiction where the Chinese Communist Party's control doesn't extend, this project could potentially be taken over by foreign creditors, at least in part, which could be lucrative. To prevent this outcome, Country Garden is likely making moves to sell off its assets domestically. Companies looking to buy assets from Country Garden would, understandably, want to purchase the more valuable ones first. This puts further financial pressure on Country Garden, and bankruptcy seems increasingly inevitable. This situation highlights a structural issue within the Chinese economy. Despite the massive influx of money, China's economic performance is declining. One reason for this is that companies are borrowing more to repay their existing debts, leading to a weaker economic stimulus effect from lending. While this is not the sole reason, it's part of why China's monetary easing policies have been less effective in revitalizing the economy. In conclusion, the issues surrounding Country Garden are just the tip of the iceberg, and many companies in similar situations exist in China. One of the peculiarities of the Chinese economy is the rapid growth of M2, money supply, alongside economic stagnation. One of the reasons behind this paradox is that an increasing amount of lending is being used to service existing debt, and this, in turn, weakens the ability of lending to stimulate the economy. Additionally, China's financial resources are concentrating in a few hands, further exacerbating the issue. I hope this helps. If you have any specific questions or need further clarification on any part of the text, please feel free to ask. This concludes our discussion for today. See you next time.